Sometimes bright and hopeful visions of the world shatter against harsh reality. These people began their journeys with enthusiasm and faith in a better tomorrow, but their adventures ended in violence and death. In the spring of 2008, 33-year-old Italian artist Pippa Bacca, real name Giuseppina Pasqualino di Marineo, put on a bridal gown, a symbol of peace and love, and set out hitchhiking across Eastern Europe and the Middle East. She began her journey on March 8th, in the company of her friend Silvia Moro. As part of a peace project called Brides on the Move, the two women, dressed in white, planned to hitchhike from Milan to Tel Aviv, stopping in cities along the way and holding performances to inspire kindness and solidarity among strangers. The idea was inspired by a song of Italian bard Fabrizio De André, which contained the line, "We are already so tired of wars. Isn't it time to go back to work in a wedding dress, or in something else white?" Throughout the trip, Giuseppina stayed in touch with her family and shared her experiences online. Italian media followed her unusual mission closely. She travelled through Italy and the Balkans, eventually reaching Turkey, but on March 31st she suddenly disappeared. Days earlier she had quarrelled with her companion and decided to continue alone. Later it was discovered that she had been picked up by a 38-year-old unemployed man named Murat Kartal, who at first intended only to rob her. Instead, he assaulted and murdered her. Already previously convicted of theft, he strangled the young woman in panic after the attack. Police traced him after he used her SIM card, and he soon confessed, showing them the place where he had hidden the body. Pippa's remains, still dressed in her white gown and covered with branches and earth, were found in a forest outside Istanbul. Her symbolic mission to travel in a wedding dress as a messenger of peace ended in a horrifying act of violence, silencing an artist who believed the world could be changed by kindness. "There is some kind of magic in this vast and beautiful world," wrote J. Austen, a 29-year-old American traveller. Together with his partner, Lauren Geoghegan, he set off to cycle around the globe. For more than a year, 369 days, the young couple lived their dream. They had left the United States in July, giving up stable jobs, a self-built tiny home, and their comfortable routines in order to explore the world. Their blog, titled Simply Cycling and subtitled Dreams Do Come True, chronicled their journey. They cycled through South Africa and Morocco, crossed Eastern Europe, reached Tajikistan, and planned to continue through Asia and Australia before returning home. Their posts reflected both the joys and the struggles of long-term travel. They wrote about breakdowns and bad weather, but also about generosity from strangers, like the Kazakh truck driver who stopped to give them ice cream, or the family who performed an impromptu string concert for them in a meadow. Austen often repeated a central lesson of their travels, that people, despite everything, are fundamentally kind. "If you read the newspapers," he wrote, "you come away convinced the world is a terrible place and people cannot be trusted. But I don't buy that. Evil is a concept we created to explain why others think differently from us. In truth, most people are kind, generous, and beautiful." But on July 29th, 2018, their belief in kindness was brutally tested. Around 3:30 p.m., while cycling with several other tourists on the scenic Kulub-Dushanbe highway in southern Tajikistan, a car deliberately swerved into their group. After striking them, the attackers got out and began assaulting the survivors with knives and axes. 4 cyclists were killed, including Jay and Lauren. 2 others were seriously wounded. At first, local police reported it as a traffic accident, but it soon became clear this was an extremist attack. Within days, the so-called Islamic State released a video showing the attackers pledging allegiance to the group. The assailants, local men aged 19 to 26, were quickly identified. Some were arrested, others killed resisting arrest. For Jay and Lauren, who believed so deeply in the goodness of humanity, this road in Tajikistan became the tragic end of their extraordinary journey. In May 2005, graduates of an American high school went to celebrate the end of their studies on Aruba, an island off the coast of South America under Dutch jurisdiction. Among the young people was 18-year-old Natalee Holloway, the stepdaughter of a successful businessman from Alabama. A week on Aruba turned into one big party. As investigator Gerald Dompig would later write in his report, the vacation amounted to a crazy 24-hour binge with oceans of alcohol. And the hotel where the Americans were staying officially told them at the end of the trip that it would not be happy to host them again next year. On May 30th, the vacation ended, and the future students arrived at the airport to fly home, all of them except Natalee. When they learned that their daughter had gone missing somewhere on the island, her mother and stepfather immediately flew to Aruba on their private plane. After contacting her friends, the Twitties found out that Natalee was last seen leaving a bar at 1:30 in the morning in the company of 3 young men. The family immediately turned to the police, and already just a few hours later the girl's companions were found. They turned out to be 17-year-old Joran van der Sloot, a Dutchman who had long lived on Aruba with his relatives, and brothers Deepak and Satish Kalpo, local guys of Surinamese origin, a little older than their friend. At first, the suspects claimed that the name Natalee Holloway meant nothing to them. However, after some time the young men admitted that they really had met the American girl in the bar and, after a couple of body shots, at her request, drove her to a lighthouse and, after a short walk, to a hotel. As they were leaving, they supposedly saw 2 men in black approach Natalee. By that time, the suspects had changed their version of events. Now, Joran claimed that the brothers had driven him home and then sped away with the girl in an unknown direction. The Kalpo brothers, on the other hand, insisted that they dropped off Natalee and van der Sloot at the beach and did not see them again that day. Investigators preferred the second version. The 3 former friends were arrested 2 more times over the next 2 years, but charges never followed. In addition, Joran's parents, the staff of the bar where Natalee was last seen, even the DJ who was playing that night, several well-known drug dealers, and even the son of a local influential politician all spent time in the investigative jail. Meanwhile, the reward announced for information about Natalee kept growing and reached $1 million. Residents of the poor island began bringing almost everything they found on the coast to the police: scraps of women's clothing, jewelry, and even a fragment of a human jawbone. But none of the finds were identified as having any relation to the case. To this day it has not been possible to find out anything about the fate of Natalee Holloway. There were many versions. Some believed that van der Sloot killed her and threw her body into the sea. Others thought that the attractive American girl had been sold into sexual slavery in Venezuela. According to yet another version, Natalee herself died of a sudden seizure or a drug overdose, and the young men, frightened, decided to dispose of the body one way or another. In reality, it is still unknown what actually happened to Natalee. In 1997, Judy Smith, a 50-year-old mother of 2 from Newton, Massachusetts, married a lawyer and decided to go to Philadelphia to join her husband Jeffrey on his business trip. On April 10th, Jeffrey went off to conferences while Judy decided to go sightseeing. Judy never returned to the hotel, and Jeffrey reported her missing. 5 months later, she was found. On September 7th, travelers discovered her partially buried remains in an isolated mountainous area. What is strange in this story is that Judy's remains were found more than 960 kilometers away in North Carolina. The exact cause of death could not be determined, but since Judy's remains were discovered in a shallow grave, the authorities concluded that she became the victim of intentional homicide. Since her wedding ring and $167 were still with her, robbery was unlikely to be the motive. It was also strange that she usually carried her belongings in a red backpack, but at the scene a blue backpack was found. Even more strange is that Judy apparently went there voluntarily because 4 witnesses reported seeing her in nearby Asheville. The witnesses said that Judy was in a great mood and mentioned in conversation that her husband was a lawyer. If the woman the witnesses spoke to was indeed Judy Smith, no one knows why she would have wanted to run away without saying anything to her family. And if Judy really did decide to disappear on her own, how did she end up dead on a remote mountain, buried in a grave? In 1989, 20-year-old Charles Horvath decided to leave his native England and travel to Canada to spend several months hitchhiking across the country. By May 11th, Charles had arrived in the province of British Columbia and stopped at a campground in Kelowna. He sent a fax to his mother, Denise Allen, informing her that he would try to meet her in Hong Kong for his 21st birthday. However, this was the last message his mother ever received. Since Charles had kept in contact up until that moment, she became worried. She decided to travel to British Columbia herself to find him. Denise discovered that Charles had left behind his tent and all of his belongings at the campground when he suddenly disappeared. After informing the police about missing Charles, Denise returned to her hotel and, one evening, found a note. "I saw him on May 26th. We were celebrating, and 2 people beat him. He died. His body is in the lake behind the bridge." Divers searched the lake but did not find Charles's body. However, Denise soon received another note claiming that they had searched the wrong side of the bridge. After a repeated search, the police did indeed find a body. The victim was first identified as Charles, but it turned out to be a local resident who had committed suicide. Denise did receive confirmation that Charles had been planning to attend a nighttime party before he vanished. Nevertheless, his disappearance has remained a mystery for 25 years. Some mysteries never find answers, lives cut short, journeys left unfinished, questions that will haunt families forever. These stories remind us of how fragile life is when we step into the unknown. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to True Stories for more real-life cases from around the world. And remember, every story deserves to be told, even if it never finds its ending.